Hey, what's going on, everybody? How you doing? I hope you guys are having a good day. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World and the Black Business School. And as you know, every week we have Powernomics Thursday, where I get an opportunity to bring in for you guys the great, the one and only Dr. Claud Anderson. Dr. Anderson is the author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, Dirty Little Secrets 1 and 2, and just an extraordinary man and a really important person in our community. And he's also somebody that I believe we can hear from this week in particular, given that so many of you have expressed your concerns about the death of Nipsey Hussle, the hip hop artist, and what he represented in the space of Black economics. So without further ado, I want to ask Dr. Anderson, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm fine, Doc. How are you doing?
I'm doing extremely well, extremely well. I'm always happy to talk to you, and I think talking to you is a breath of fresh air because I think that we not to refer to you as an elder. You're still a young man, but when you're a little older than the age of say 25 or 30, you got wisdom that I think people need to hear, so we can kind of understand who we are and what to do next and good strategy. And so so as we kind of begin the discussion, I wanted to ask you first and foremost, just out of curiosity, did you hear anything at all about Nipsey Hussle and who he was and things like that, or what have you heard?
Somebody sent me an email and indicated that he was a very adamant, devoted follower of some of the principles of Powernomics, but I never knew him nor met him, and I talked to him personally, Dr. Watkins. So I know nothing about him. Only thing I know, it looks like he took Nipsey Russell's old name from the Black comedian from about 30 years, 40 years ago. Nipsey Russell was a magnificent Black comedian, but I don't know anything about him. But I imagine he was a nice guy.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you why I knew about him. I'm not gonna lie, I never knew he was a rapper, but I never I'd never heard any of his songs until this week. But what I did know, what I knew him for, is that he was very deeply respected in the community for his commitment to Black economics. He was a guy that really fought hard, on the Powernomics front. A lot of the principles you and I talk about, he talked about those things. So in that regard, he was a very significant individual. And what I wanted to do was, and I thought this would be a fun opportunity for us to celebrate, what he represented, and to also introduce people to other sides of who he was, specifics of who he was, and get your take on some of these concepts. Now, one of the things I pulled up, and you guys can't see it on your screen, but it says 7 Money and Ownership Lessons by Nipsey Hussle. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull out some of these lessons, and I'm gonna run it by you, Dr. Anderson, if that's okay. And I'd like to know the first things that come to mind for you when you hear these things. Now, first thing I want to tell everybody is please hit the thumbs up button if you just came in. Also, everybody, please shout out your city, your business and your dream, your city, your business and your dream. Put the URL for your business so people can network with you, so everybody can see what everybody else is doing, so we can all become better connected. So make sure to, hey, Lamoria and Shanita, and I see some of you on YouTube, John Black and William Charles, and I see some others in here. I see Akeem and Rajdat and Dual Victory. How you doing? Okay, so as we get started, let's begin here. Okay, so one of the principles that Nipsey Hussle believed in, I'm gonna pick about 3 or 4 out of the 7, and we'll analyze the rest a little bit later on. One of them is that he talked about how you spend your money. He said it isn't cool to be in the club spending all of this money or having cars and jewelry, but you don't own any real estate or fourplex. If the answer is no, you're not a real hustler. So can you kind of speak to that in terms of Black spending habits, consumption habits, and the difference between being a consumer versus being an owner and a producer?
Okay, thank you. And when you see me lean into the screen like this, it means I have a hard time hearing you, and not that I'm in love. I don't want you to see my face up close.
Well, it's okay. I can yell it again. I can say it again. I don't even mind.
Yeah. See, one day when I get a better computer here, I'm gonna be able to sit back and relax like you and look good like I'm an existing movie star, and be able not to lean in to hear all the time. But in that regard, as I've said over and over again, Black folk need to understand the difference between surviving and prospering. And so you can't do either one of those two things before you get past, you can't prosper until you learn how to survive. Survive means you got to learn how to protect yourselves. Right now, Black folk are totally vulnerable. They can't protect themselves on anything right now. And see, that's why I gave you this concept of, like I talked about, the importance of building a community instead of neighborhoods. All we got in this country are neighborhoods. A neighborhood is totally useless. And so what obviously the fellow, what's his name again?
Nipsey Hussle. Just think about Nipsey Hussle.
Let me use Russell. He was on track for the right thing. You got to have a community. A neighborhood is totally useless. But once you build these communities, you got to learn how to use them to protect yourselves. Right now, we're totally dependent on other people providing us with our daily needs. There's nothing that we produce in any magnitude to be able to survive. We're almost 100% dependent on other people. We're 100% consumers and nearly zero producers. And then this is what Dr. Anderson, we see all these major companies talking about the power of the black dollar, consumer power. There is no such thing as consumer power. Consumerism comes from the word to consume. To consume means to be used up. That's why up until about 1950, Dr. Watkins, when a person got cancer of the lungs, they said he had consumption. Consumption means his lungs are being eaten up. Anything that's being consumed is being wasted away, being destroyed. And so when you start bragging about blacks being consumers, that's the worst thing you can do. Black folk don't need to be consumers; they need to learn how to be producers. Where the wealth and power belongs to those who produce. And right now we are zero producers. That's why they got a national movement called an international movement, where they want to start eliminating a lot of the consumers and giving more production power to those who got the money, wealth, and power. That's what globalization is all about. It's trying to get power. And let me reduce it to its lowest level and try to explain it to you. I see people talking about, well, dope dealers, use that as an example because they're producing, but it's whoever produces the dope. He's the one that got the power. The guy that's buying it, the consumer, the crackhead, and the narcotic addict, he's a consumer. He's in a weakened state. He's being destroyed and wasted away. So the power is that always with who produces. The letdown or the wasted part is those who are consuming products. And right now we consume almost everything. And so if you're going to do something, go back to the community and start protecting yourselves by learning how to produce. When people say, what should they produce? You should be producing everything that you get outside your community. Produce it first and foremost for your own community. Well, what do black folks need? You need exactly the same thing whites need. You need clothing, shoes, eyeglasses, food, resources, gas, oil, everything. That's what you should be producing. And I see blacks every day getting into a newspaper saying, we don't know what to produce. Produce what you need. Produce what you need in your own communities. And then once you've taken care of your own communities and producing, and then you consumed everything you need in your own community, you got some surplus, then you start exporting the surplus. Never export what you need to be able to survive. That's how you protect yourselves. You never export what you need to survive. You first take care of your community, produce enough to take care of your people and all your friends and loved ones. Then when you get some surplus, you export it out. And we don't do that, but that's what the other groups do. They always take care of their people first, build their own communities, produce products and services, goods for their own people. And once they got a surplus, they run to the black community to dump it. It's called dumping. Dump it in the black communities.
Interesting. Well, everybody who just came in, I'm speaking with Dr. Claud Anderson, author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, and many others, and Dirty Little Secrets 1 and 2. And what we're talking about is the Powernomics principles of the late Nipsey Hussle. I think this is a really important way to show respect to our brother who just passed, is to really talk about what he was about and to really internalize not just the grief of this loss, but also the importance of his message and who he was. And I think that this is this is kind of an economic memorial, if you will, in the sense that I wanted to introduce Dr. Anderson a little bit more closely to what Nipsey was doing before he died and kind of get his perspective. Now, Dr. Anderson, the next Powernomics principle, or money and ownership lesson that Nipsey used to share. And I wanted to get your analysis on it. And I'll throw in something if something comes to mind. It relates to what you were talking about when you were talking about producing the things that you need, that in your community, you said two things that actually made me think about Nipsey, what he represented. One was you talked about the difference between a neighborhood and a community. A community is where there's connection, there's accountability, there's a code, of behavior, if you will, a code of conduct, or what I think you refer to as a code of conduct. There are standards, and in fact, a lot of people. One of the things that people were concerned about and very sad about is that the person that actually killed Nipsey was a person from his own neighborhood. You know, a person from I think the same gang, if I'm not mistaken. I think they were both Crips. And it almost seems to me that this relates to what you were saying about just codes of conduct and accountability, just lines you do not cross. And it's almost as if we've lost that respect for one another, you know, and that connection for one another. Can you kind of speak to that in terms of the difference between a community and a neighborhood? I know you've talked about it before, but I'd love for you to drill in on that a little bit more for people so they can really understand that who are listening.
Right. Well, first of all, people constantly talk about the Black communities. We don't have any Black communities. Let's make sure we're clear on that. We do not have not one single Black community in the entire United States. We got 44 million Black folk, but not one community. Because to qualify as a community, Dr. Watkins, you must have at least three things in there to qualify as a community. You must have an independent, wholly independent economy that would produce products, service, goods, a tax base, and income, and business opportunities for your own people. That's the primary thing you must have to separate yourself from being a neighborhood. A neighborhood is where you eat and sleep. That's all it is. A neighborhood is where you eat and sleep. A hotel, like the Holiday Inn, that's a neighborhood. People come in, they go out. But but we don't have even we don't even have hotels. We don't even have that. Most of our neighborhoods don't even qualify to be called neighborhoods. You know why? Because as you just indicated, the crime has gotten so bad in a neighborhood and so vicious and so run down and ragged and destructive that now they run the neighbors out. All you got left is the hood. That's why you hear people saying, I come from the hood. That means there's no neighbor anymore. The neighbor's been run out. He's moved someplace else or moved to another town outside into the suburbs. So we don't even have neighborhoods. All we got is a hood. We don't even have the neighbors. So what we have to do is go back and say, how do you build a community? A community must have those things I talked about. A code of conduct. First, you must have a wholly independent economic structure that will provide services, goods, products, business opportunities, and a tax base for your own people. Then once you get that, then you must also have what's called a code of conduct, a code of etiquette that tells you how you treat everybody living in that community, how you support them, how you buy from them, how you protect them, how you service them, how you look after them, and how you place their interests first and before anybody else's. That's a code of conduct. Every group in the country had a code of conduct. Whites had code of conduct all through slavery. They had codes of conduct and how each one would treat Black folk. And as a matter of fact, that's in 1705. They put out a code of conduct in 1705 into what's called the slave codes in 1705. It says, here's how a Black person should be treated. Here's how every white person must respond to that Black person. Nothing, and anything beyond this, the white folks would run you out of town. But if you let a Black man call you by your first name, or a Black man look down on you, or a Black man questioned you, or a Black man did reckless eyeballing on a white woman or touched a white woman, they had a code of conduct. We don't have a code of conduct. In our community, what we got is a thing, not a code of conduct. We have an operating principle that says, do your own thing. Do your own thing. Not a code of conduct. So people you're talking about to kill the Black guy, they just say, well, there's no code of conduct. It means go for yourself. Do your own thing. And you don't have to be approved by the community. And the last factor you need to have a community, you must have a body of elected officials who will put your interests and represent you politically in front and foremost on anything that goes down. We don't have any that's why we don't have the Black leadership. We elect the Black folks to office, but they don't ascribe to the Black community. The first thing a Black person does nowadays has been doing it since about 1960s. He said, I'm gonna run for public office. And the first thing I'm gonna do, if I want all you Black folk to elect me and put me in office. And as soon as I get in office, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna represent all the people. And that defeats the entire principle of politics. Politics is a principle that says you must place your values on yourself and your own people first. It's called quid pro quo, something for company, something for one thing, which means a code of conduct. If I put you in office, you owe me. If I scratch your back, you scratch mine. But see, black folk don't have that code of conduct. So what they get when they get into public office, they want to represent everybody. But see, the whites code of conduct will never allow that to exist. They say if you get elected here as a white man from Mississippi or Alabama coming to Washington D.C., he better not come here talking about he's representing black folk. He must represent his own people first. And so we don't have any communities. That's the first thing. No code of conduct, no economy, and no responsible politicians that would protect their own people first and foremost.
Interesting. Everybody who's watching, I'm speaking with Dr. Claud Anderson, and I thought it would be beneficial to the community to allow Dr. Anderson to come in and to discuss the Powernomics principles of the late Nipsey Hussle. Now, I didn't allow him. I don't allow him to do anything. He honors us with his presence. So I want to make sure that's 100% clear. And one of the things that everybody should understand is that it's very important that in the midst of how we're feeling about, what happened, with Nipsey's murder, a lot of people are very upset about it. We have to know that Nipsey wasn't just a rapper. He was a black man. He was a black man that believed in important ideals of community development. He believed in seeing to it that his people were taken care of, and that might have cost him his life. But I think that it also gave him the opportunity to seek immortality. Because I think he left a legacy unlike any other rapper since Tupac Shakur. Now, I want to say thank you also to Thomas Wilson. Thank you so much for your donation. It may be returned 10,000-fold. And he says, thank you, Dr. Anderson. Thomas says this. And everybody who wants to be a part of what Dr. Anderson is doing, in case you guys don't know, he's been fighting on reparations for a very, very long time, and not just talking about it, but has filed lawsuits, has pushed for legislation, has the Harvest Institute. If you want to support that, a couple things you can do. One, you can make donations to harvestinstitute.org. Somebody please type that in. That's harvestinstitute.org. Also, he sells all of his books are available at powernomics.com. There's a Black History bundle pack that he has that has all the books and the DVD for just $99, which is literally worth, I would pay $99,000 for it, because these are things that you don't learn in school. So I hope you guys will go check out powernomics.com. So let me ask you,
Doc, let me jump in and pick up where I left off, because I told you have to build these communities. They keep asking me what kind of business should they go into to produce. See, they must become producers. And they have two levels of producing. The first level would be produce those things which are absolutely essential for your survival. Now, what would those be, Dr. Watkins? One, you have to be able to control one thing that's essential. Since the body is 75% water, you need to be trying to put yourself in a position to make sure you got safe, clean water to be able to survive. That's one thing. Get into the water business, however you want to cut it. You can get into the bottled water business, or be able to somehow figure out how you can have access to water, either through the public system or through the private system. Two, you must be able to you got to have food. You got to figure out how to either have connected to farms or to some agricultural sources where you can make sure that you can meet your daily dietary consumption needs by having enough food. 70% of Black folk in America live outside of 10 major large metropolitan areas. They only got about a 10 to 13 day food supply. I can starve almost 70% of Black people in America in about less than a 2-week time. If I had a major storm, a blizzard comes into the north, for instance, I can almost starve them to death. You know why? Because the minute the people hear a storm is coming up north in these major cities, they will all rush to the grocery stores and to the supermarkets. They will clean out the shelves. There will be nothing left on those shelves, because there will be no food supplies. Those major cities are supplied with food every 24 hours with trucks coming in and bringing it in. And Black folks, there are no major supermarkets that are owned and controlled by Black folk in those neighborhoods. They need to focus on how can they get into producing food and having food available for their people, point two. Point three is they must have some source of energy. Now, where to get the energy from? What Blacks you know in the energy business? And what I mean by energy, let's take electricity as an example. You need electricity to operate these cities. Since most of Blacks are living in big apartment structures. Now, if you lose electric capacity, guess what's going to happen? You won't be able to get in, use the elevators. If you use electricity, you won't be able to go to this. We won't be able to go to the gas stations. The pumps work off of computers and electricity. Everything. A major blizzard comes into a north with 70% of where all the black folk live, they will freeze to death. They have no way of being able to get any source of energy. They can't get food, and they won't, because they're dependent on surrounding communities. If there's anything left, they don't produce anything. And lastly, the fourth point, they should be thinking very seriously about how healthcare. Now I see them all going to conventions and the conferences, all carrying, selling little bottles. As we got this kind of food, we got that kind of food. Health is a great importance to us. Yes, it is. But where are your hospitals? Where are your facilities, your medical centers, your medical complexes? In the United States, with 44 million black folk in America, Dr. Boyce, Watkins, you know about it. There are 44 million black folk in America. You got 2 hospitals in America. You got one in Washington, D.C. at Howard University, and you got one in Harlem with Harlem Medical Hospital. Where are your hospitals? You tell me, where are the major hospitals that black folk have control over, and has staffed it with blacks in the medical field? Show me where your medical complexes are in the black communities. Show me a black neighborhood. Show me one in America that has medical complexes and hospitals in them. Those are the 4. I'm just using those 4 right there as an example. That's at the top level. If you really want to get serious, you go down to the second level and say, and follow the Powernomics principles. I made that point over and over again for black folk for 50 to 60 damn years. What are you producing? And they said, well, Dr. Anderson, well, you know this. And I know what you're saying. It's too late for you to go in a lot of these areas, because right now those areas are taken up by other groups, immigrants and whites. But you can win if you follow Powernomics principles. Learn how to 2 things. Learn how to dominate in business, Dr. Watkins, wherever you dominate in the population or in consumer spending patterns. Did you hear what I said then? Dominate on those 2 bases at the second level. Either dominate where you're at a major population, or 2, dominate where you had where you're on your consumer spending patterns. By that, I mean, if you're a city right now, like Detroit, Michigan was, which is a 92% population, you should be owning and controlling 92% of the businesses in that city, because you're the dominant population. Why is it I go to a city where blacks are the dominant population, they have no businesses? Why is it? Let's use that as an example. 2, if I go inside that city, look at those businesses. I can using Detroit as an example, where you got like about 3 or 4% Arab population. And guess what? Arabs control 90% of all the businesses in a city that is 92% black. Out of 146 gas stations in the city of Detroit, last time I checked, Arabs owned and was running 144. Only 2 were owned by blacks. I heard recently, maybe those 2 are going out of business. So I went past those 4 things: food, health, energy, and what do blacks own? Nothing anywhere in the country. You're not producing, you're consuming. And consuming means to be wasted away or be set up to be deteriorated down to nothing.
Wow. Everybody, please make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Thank Dr. Anderson for coming in and joining us today. We're talking about the economic principles of the late Nipsey Hussle and putting the scholarly twist on it to make sure we drill down and focus on what matters. Don't just be sad. You could be sad, you could be mad, whatever it is you want to be. Just make sure you're making progress. And thank you, Keith Baker, for your donation. We really appreciate that. And Keith says, I purchased 3 power packs to circulate Dr. Anderson throughout my family, and I will purchase your flashcards as gifts to my children and family. He's referring to our financial flashcards for children, which I invented just specifically for Black children. If you want to take a look and you want your kids to get a financial education, you can go to financialflashcards.com. That's financialflashcards.com. If you want to get a Powernomics bundle pack, you can go to powernomics.com. And I think that that's a great idea, to give gifts that empower the people you love, and not just toys and things that they're going to waste and not even use and that are going to be worthless in about a year. These are books. I've had my Claud Anderson books for many, many years, and I read them over and over and over again as economic Bibles. And I think that that's why we need to make sure we share these ideas with each other. So hit the thumbs up button. I want to ask you this, Dr. Anderson. So the next economic principle I saw from Nipsey Hussle, and I want to ask you about this, has to do with the ownership of real estate. He says, I own the block where I used to hustle from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I hustled, then I rented. now me and David Gross will own in Crenshaw. So Nipsey, before he died, one of his big objectives, one of his biggest goals was to take the communities where he used to rent and turn himself into an owner. He says, now, I'm an owner, and the people that used to mistreat us in the stores, and as you mentioned, the people from other communities, Arabs, etc. He said, now they pay me rent because I'm the owner of the building. When you talk about real estate, how important is real estate, in the whole Powernomics ideology? And also, how does that tie to our quest for reparations? I know that you have a lot of familiarity with all the land and all the real estate that was taken from Black people, and it seems to me that should be a high priority to get as much real estate back as we possibly can. Can you kind of speak to some of that?
Okay, well, and let's go back to the history a little bit. The primary purpose of all immigration in this country was based on two things. One was to bring whites in and empower them. Empower them with what? Enrichment. Enrichment in what? Two things: land and free labor. They want to get free land from the Indians and free labor from Black folk. That's the whole nature of people coming to this country. Contrary to whatever you hear and read in all these various books about all these immigrants were coming to America looking for happiness, looking for religious freedom. That's the biggest lies. Those are the biggest lies ever told. They were coming here. They could have found happiness in China, in Russia, in Europe, in Germany. They could have found happiness any place. And when we come here because of religious freedom, they could have gone out in the damn woods and prayed every night. Nobody cared. They were coming to America because they were invited here to be enriched with two things: free land and free Black labor. And once they got here, the land was free, but the land didn't have very much value. Land had very little value. Andrew Jackson, the president, said that over and over. He says that a Black slave labor brings 90% of the value to the land, which means you can go out and get all the land you want. It had no value until you put a slave there who go out there and pull down the trees, kill the bear, move the rocks, build the bridges, build the houses, pick the cotton, rice, indigo. That black labor and brought wealth into the land. Land was free. So white folks then, what they set up a construct that Black folk need to keep in mind. Every white person came here. He came here looking first and foremost for land. That's why, as I said on 20 or 30 occasions with you, that George Washington said that over and over again, that the value in this country would be in the land. He said, therefore, I want 100,000 acres. and Thomas Jefferson, give me 100,000. And Patrick Henry said, give me 65,000. And so if you invite all these immigrants come to America, they're coming to America for unearned benefits. Those unearned benefits must be in terms of something that they can measure. They can put their hands on material. Don't listen to that bull crap about, well, I want freedom and opportunity to vote. No immigrants come to America to vote. They don't give a damn about voting. They could have stayed in their own country. They come in here to get material things they can measure so they can get wealth, power, and resources and take it to the bank. And so that's what the construct. So every immigrant could get 650 acres the minute he set foot in the country. And for every slave, he got another 150 acres. Land was the basis of all this, was to be able to get that hands on that land. And the biggest thing they did, yes, they could raise tobacco, they could raise rice, they could raise corn, they could raise indigo. But let's take one of them, take cotton, for instance. And that's why cotton became king. It didn't become king because of the cotton. It became king because the land was there to raise it. And that's why every slave they put on there was required to pick a minimum of about 300 or 400 pounds of cotton a day. And typically they were required to put it in bales. The average one had to produce somewhere between a bale of cotton, and the value of the wealth of the slave owner was how many bales of cotton a hand could pick. They call it hands. Every slave was called a hand. So every hand had to pick somewhere between 400 and 500 pounds of cotton. And that cotton would sell in bales. And then a given year, he might be responsible for picking 5 or 6 bales, multiply that by the value of the cotton. The value of the cotton was only about 15 cents a pound. And so they set up this whole structure based on what the land could produce. And that's where the wealth came from. That's why before slavery ended, the wealth was based on the land in general, but didn't have very much value, only about 10%, and 90% was the back of a slave. But once slavery ended, the wealth of this nation shifted. From the back of a slave, it shifted to Wall Street. Wall Street became the primary source. And what they don't tell you, that's why it's called Wall Street. Wall Street was a community for black slaves. That's what, and that was built on the land where black slaves lived. It was called Wall Street. That's what the wall was for. And then, so the wealth of this nation that was in the land and the slaves shifted to Wall Street in New York. And that's what wealth. And after that, they started, because the value of a slave regulated the value of Wall Street. Then the price index was based on what a slave cost and what a slave could produce, as I told you, in terms of cotton, rice, tobacco, and indigo. And so land was a tremendous important. So now for black folk in this country, you were denied in the land specifically and solely to keep you impoverished. So black folk between 1866 and 1920, black folk managed to acquire almost 20 million acres of land. Not the best land, but those slaves who couldn't read and write, to acquire 20 million acres of land by 1920. Keep this in mind. They couldn't read and write, but they had enough damn sense to know that land was important, because they learned that from white folk. And by 1920, according to the census, they had acquired 20 million acres of land.
What happened? What happened to that 20 million acres of land? What?
Two things. After World War I, and the slaves started coming back into the country, the Industrial Revolution really took off in the United States at that point. It was based on slavery. And they started inventing all kind of new technology and machinery. They invented a machine, for instance, that began one called a cotton picking machine. One cotton picking machine could pick 50 times more cotton than one person could in an hour. And so they began to industrialize the South. And those blacks began to move out of the South and move north. But also those blacks who came back from the World War I, the racial hostility in this country had increased substantially. Why? Second reason was because they'd approved the 19th Amendment for white women. And white women now was really going to lock down on black folk. And so white women started supporting the white man. So racism really increased at that point in time in these small towns. So by 1920, 1921, you had what's called the red flood across this country. Because what happened, like in Tulsa, Oklahoma was one of them. In all these major cities, starting in about 1920, 1921, you had major race riots in all these cities all over the country. Well, it was Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Greenwood, Oklahoma, or Rosewood in Florida, or Wilmington, North Carolina. They had race in New York. They called it a draft riot, everything. They were going crazy against black folk to shut black folk down and make sure they were no longer competitive. Because those blacks would come back from the war and wanted to be competitive. So blacks in the South found more confidence saying, we're going to have a major black migration out of the South. So after about 1920s, blacks began to migrate away from the land, heading north, looking for a promised land in the north. They began to abandon their properties, and the properties, and look, their 20 million acres began to drop and decrease in number. And once they got in the north, a lot of them had to abandon their farms, and whites knew that. And so as black folk left the farms, white folk began to confiscate as much of that land as possible. Every spring about May, when the tax rolls went out for any unpaid taxes, they would go out and pick up tax certificates on any unpaid property in the South. And blacks went up north. Once went up north, they no longer had an interest in paying the taxes on property in the South, or was abandoned. But in addition to that, whites also said, we're gonna re-enslave blacks and take some of that land by using them for industrial or private prisons. And so they began, anything that blacks owed white folk, they can imprison them for that and use them and take the land away from it. So black property dropped from 20 million down to about a couple of million or so. And that's what happened to your property. They lost all that land. They got jobs up north in the steel mills, in the chemical factories, and the tire companies, and the automobile industry. That's what he went for. And they lost, most of that land has disappeared.
You know, it almost sounds like a precursor to integration and gentrification. You know, like
Same
you said,
thing.
leaving what you own and going toward the promised land that you think white folks are going to give you, and then also when you abandon what's yours, they come back and they take it over, and then the value goes up after they do things with it. And we could have done it all along, you know, like the inner cities. You know, we wanted to get out of the inner cities, get out of our neighborhoods to go live next to them, and then they came right back downtown, took that same area that we thought was worthless and turned it into multi-billion-dollar properties. And I think that's really fascinating that you say that, and I think it almost speaks to to almost what might be called economic self-esteem. Just seeing the value in what is yours. And not believing that the value is over there, but understanding the value is right here at home. The value is right beneath your feet and right there in your own family, right there in your own life, your own soul, your own capability. And I think that for Black people, it almost seems that when you talk about hundreds of years of us being trained to believe that we are inferior, to believe that we are 3/5 of a person, to believe that we can't compete, it leads us into a real negative mind space. Even in the conversation about reparations, there's been a lot of debate about this, and I've told there's a couple of movements that are really pushing forward with the reparations conversation. Two things I've said is, number one, you can't have that conversation without bringing in Dr. Claud Anderson. He must be consulted at every turn. But then number two, some of the individuals that might be associated with the movements, on one hand, they're saying we should get reparations, but then on the other hand, they're saying we can't do nothing without white people. We need the government. The government is going to save us. And I'm like, well, no, we deserve something from the government. The government owes us something. There's no question about it. But our economic self-esteem must rise in order for us to even know what to do if we get the reparations. I mean, if you get the reparations check and you're not thinking big, you're not thinking on a high level, if you're thinking small, if you're still thinking like a slave-minded person is always going to find their way right back to slavery. You can give them all the freedom in the world, but freedom, I think, requires a type of courage, a type of vision, a type of discipline, a type of commitment, and a willingness to defend and support what you have in front of you. And so in a way, so Doctor, that didn't even lead to a question. That was just me doing a stream of thoughts in terms of based on what you said. I really believe that economic self-esteem is a concept, because if you take two people and you give each of them $10,000, and one of them has big dreams and the other one ain't got no dreams. One of them is dreaming about the next 10 years, the other one's dreaming about Saturday night. How many women he could chase or whatever. What's going to happen with that money? If you give each of them the same amount of money, and the guy with the big dreams, the guy that's actually got a long-term plan, a long-term vision, who's thinking as an investor, is going to do more with that same amount of money than somebody who has no dreams at all. So I want to say to everybody listening, raise your game up self-esteem wise. We're talking about we're talking with Dr. Claud Anderson about Nipsey Hussle. But one thing you can say about Nipsey Hussle in his life, based on my study of him, I did not follow a lot of his music and everything when he was alive. I knew about him economically though, because we both were early investors in Jay Morrison's real estate fund. But if you notice, one thing you notice about Nipsey is that his economic self-esteem was higher than most people around him. That's why he said, I want to be an owner. I want to be a boss. I want to control things. I want all of us to be bosses. So Dr. Anderson, let me ask you this question. First of all, I don't know if you had anything to say in response to what I just said. I know you usually have something to add.
I think you're absolutely right. And what Black folks need to understand is right now, that land is being taken from them right now. The remainder of that property is being subtracted back into the white community as a result of the immigration process that started in the 1950s, where white folks abandoned large urban areas and moved to and created a new thing, a phenomenon called suburbs. Suburbs did not exist until the 1950s when the integration started. Whites started with what's called white flight. White flight meant whites going to get away from the inner cities, move out of these urban areas, and take everything of value with them out to new land that they're going to develop, called suburbs and exurbs and everybody else. And so when they moved out, they took the industries, the business, the tax base, the middle income, and the voting power into the suburbs, and left the Black folk under what they call a scorched earth policy, which means you can own those, you can take over politically in those urban cities, but you're not going to have any power and resources because we're going to move it all to the suburbs, so we can still control you from the suburbs, because economics runs over politics 1,000 times with nothing left over. It's economics that controls your system. And that's what Trump is trying to tell you. That's why you got 600 white multi-billionaires in the United States keep telling you the same thing. Voting ain't worth a damn if you don't have money behind it as a group. That's the difference. That's why you can have a 13% Black population in America that has 0.5% of anything of value. When just the opposite, you can have Jews at a 0.5% of the population. They control almost 100% of some of these industries, because Black folk never got it through their heads, but it is money that makes the difference. Now watch the next election. They're gonna tell Blacks how important it is to go out and vote. Vote for what? If you don't have any money to control the system, you get nothing. In the meantime, while you're out voting, these immigrants gonna gentrify these cities. Period. All these urban areas are gonna be gentrified, and along with the gentrification process comes the second process like a train. You got the engine on taking back land is called gentrification. It's hooked into the next car behind it. That's called privatization. Privatization means once we move in there and gentrify it, we're going to bring in the second level, which is privatize. We're going to privatize everything in there, and by setting up our own privately owned businesses that would gentrify white values and white culture and white ownership in businesses. And so that's what, and immigrants are going to come in with the same thing and take it over. That's why Washington, D.C., there used to be Chocolate City back in the 78 when I came here with President Carter. Is that with a 78% Black population is down to about 41% now. Detroit, Michigan, there used to be 92, it's way down, something like about 65. They lost half their population. Harlem, there used to be Black, that's gone. Harlem now is pretty much controlled by immigrants and whites. So what I'm saying is these cities are going to be gentrified, but not only in terms of from the private side, they're also going to take over all the major public entities in those cities. Once they gentrify you, they're going to take over all the public entities and put those into the hands of whites. Just use Detroit, Michigan as an example. Detroit, Michigan was known historically as one of the best cities in the country, for where you can go there and find nice home, had a high quality home stock, residential home stock. They had a good housing stock. They had some of the best job opportunities in the automobile industries and everything else you want to think about. But in there, they also had like the bridge to Canada. They had a tunnel to Canada. They had the riverfront. They had a art institute, major arts institute. They also had Black history museums there. But they had a golf course. But guess what's happening now? And they have Joe Louis Arena. All those things are going into the hands of whites now. They're going to go over there and take over. They're going to take over the bridge to Canada. They're going to take over the tunnel to Canada. Each of those things produce money. They're going to be privately owned. The bridge will be privately owned. The tunnel will be privately owned. The golf course will be privately owned. The city airport in Detroit will be privately owned. And all the major stadiums downtown, like the Joe Louis Arena or Cobo Hall, would be privately owned. All the land on the riverfront would be privately owned when it used to be in the public sector. Black folk never seem to get it. They don't understand it. And Washington, D.C. was soon to be, it won't be Chocolate City anymore. It's going to be, what we call that? I got to get another name for that. Raisin cookie or something. what it
Rainbow sherbet.
But that's my point. See, everything going to be, but you are right on time. They're going to gentrify everything, but it's going to be followed by privatization.
Interesting. Everybody, I'm talking to Dr. Claud Anderson about the late great Nipsey Hussle and his Powernomics principles. And Dr. Anderson is the author of many books that everybody should read: Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, Dirty Little Secrets 1 and 2. I encourage you to visit powernomics.com to own copies of all of the books. Your children should read these books before they read anything else. This is the best start when it comes to learning your economics. Also, if you haven't gotten started on your economic journey, we do have the Black Business School. We have 80,000 students now all around the world, and we're teaching economics on a mass scale. Right now, the vast majority of our students are stock market investors. A large percentage of them are business owners. Most of them understand the power of economics. And if you're interested in getting started, you want to pick a class to begin with, you can go to blackmoney101.com. That's blackmoney101.com. The trail is very straightforward. We got 101, 102, 103, all the way up to 106, which will cover pretty much everything that you know in economics. And why do we do this? Well, because I was a finance professor at Syracuse University. It's now almost $60,000 a year to go to that school. I felt like that was too much for Black folks. So now that literally costs you less than $3 a day. In fact, at blackmoney101.com, you can actually join for about $1.20 a day. So you get college level education for $1.20 a day. And when you get done, you can get a certificate from the Black Business School. So somebody please type that URL in. It's blackmoney101.com. Also, if you're watching on anywhere on social media, please take 1 second. Please hit the thumbs up button. Please hit the share button. Please hit the subscribe button. It's actually 101, not one on one. It's 101. So it's 101, 102. 102, 103, etc. So also please hit the thumbs up button if you haven't done that. Hit the share button, subscribe button. Don't forget, we're also on iTunes. You can listen to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud and all that good stuff. So Dr. Anderson, let me throw another.
Can I squeeze in a word for you? On what you just finished asking the question about the value of land. That's why in that first book, excuse me, called Black Labor, White Wealth, what I did in that book was timeline everything, and you're very information for that book. I timeline to show every technique, every trick, every public policy, every custom, every law that they did to show how the wealth was maldistributed from the beginning all the way to the end, where every penny went into white hands, how they how they maldistributed the land, where they gave white folk 2 billion, not million, but 2 billion acres of free land. And in that land, that's where the wealth is. The wealth is in the land. That was the gold, the silver, the chrome, the bauxite, the magnesium, the cotton, the rice, the indigo, the gas, and the oil. They gave them 2 billion acres. And then they started developing the West. They did the same thing to railroads. They had 11 railroad systems in the United States. They gave each railroad, Dr. Watkins, they gave each railroad land picked up 2 million acres of free land on each, and they got 6 miles of free land on either side of the railroads, as far as the eye can see across the United States. All that land and the wealth has been transferred to subsequent generation in value. That's why whites right now own and control initially 99% of all the wealth in the country. Now it's down to 87%. 87, really let me be a little more specific. 87.5% of all the wealth in this nation is now locked and boxed and frozen into the white society. Let me get you to understand that. That means only 13% is up for grabs. And then the blacks are gonna have to compete for that 13% with all these immigrants coming into the country. That's why right now your wealth is not increasing, it's going down backwards. You only had 1/2 of 1% of the wealth at the end of slavery. And you notified me, told me the same thing about 2 or 3 weeks ago to talk. The latest projection is that in about another 19 to 21 years, that black wealth level is gonna be zero, Z-E-R-O in America. And even if white folk didn't gain any more wealth, from the wealth they got in the land already, it's being passed on from one generation to the next, to succeeding generation. It's been passed on. It's frozen in their stock accounts, their bonds, their trust accounts, their corporations, and everything else, their business opportunities. That wealth is locked in the white community, and that wealth can be passed on. But that means that if whites didn't gain any more wealth from where they are right now, if I were God, I'd say stop. As white people, you can't gain any more wealth. You got 87.5% locked and boxed in your communities, in your businesses, in your schools, in your banks. That's why every top big building in every city is owned by whites. Blacks don't own a damn thing from Boston to San Diego, nothing. Drive through any city, look at all the business, go to all these malls all over the country. Blacks don't own a damn thing. But even if I were God and say, you whites cannot gain any more wealth than what you got, stop, you got to freeze right now. Guess what? It'll take black people another 239 years to catch up to where whites are right now. If whites didn't gain anymore, we got major problems, and all that's in the land. Go back to your initial question about a half an hour ago. You asked me the value and importance of the land. The land is where you tell black don't give up any damn land to anybody. Stop moving from city to city. Social integration is as bad as gentrification, where you're complicit by committing integration out of your neighborhoods and reducing your communities and neighborhoods and giving the land to immigrants coming in, or letting whites come in and build businesses, immigrants building. You're committing economic suicide. And so what I'm saying to you, no, the land is where the wealth is. And that's why you asked about, your eyes rolled when I said that we lost 20 million. And see, it's gonna go down further. And right now in the South, we got a few million left. I'm trying to come up with a lot of programs to start showing blacks how to build vertically integrated businesses to use that land. And sometime in our future broadcast, I'm gonna ask you for permission to start identifying some vertical industries, about 5 or 6 of them I would encourage blacks to go into. Would that be permissible with you?
Oh, absolutely. You don't even have to ask permission. You just do it, and then I ain't gonna say nothing about it. And it's funny you mentioned that, because one of the principles that Nipsey Hussle talked about actually was on vertical integration. He talks about owning supply chains. He argued that we should own the supply chain from production to consumption. That that basically, that when you talk about controlling an industry, you got to understand how to really manage and control every part of the process and not just one part of it. Like with entertainment, we're able to produce the entertainment, but then it seems like the distribution of it and the monetization of it, et cetera, is controlled by other communities. And so many of our best artists and people that have so much talent are not able to get their talent out to the world because they don't have distribution systems to get it out there. So can you talk about that a little bit in terms of vertical integration and what that would look like?
Right. It should be vertically ordered. Every business you want to go into should be vertically ordered. Power and resource is always vertical, going from the highest to the lowest. And see, and most of these immigrants, they've been taught that culturally and acculturated to understand this before they get here. So by vertical, I mean at the production level at the bottom. That's the lowest level where you're producing. Then once you produce something, then you move up to the second level. That'll be wholesaling or distributorships. On top of it, then the top will be retailing. Go straight up. In other words, learn how to control and own everything from the bottom to the top. You don't go horizontal by having a lot of business spread out where people are underneath you and over you. That's a death sentence. You try to lock it in boxes straight up from the bottom to the top. Like I'm gonna put it in there so they can see it. Go all the way up. That's why in the seafood industry, I used to tell black folk, try to go vertical. You produce your seafood, you warehouse it, distribute it, and you sell it to retail restaurants and start Red Lobster chains, a restaurant if you want to. In other words, control everything in seafood from the boat to the throat. That's what I'm saying to you. Just try to control it from the bottom to the top. All we do is pick key industries. What are some of the key industries? What do blacks do? We should be controlling the shoe industry. We should be controlling the leather industry. We should be controlling the seafood industry. We should be controlling the hair industry. Any place where you dominate in a product, you should make sure nobody can penetrate it. And you produce that product, you follow it all the way up to a drugstore shelf or a grocery store shelf. You control everything from the distributorships, warehousing, wholesaling to retailing. Let nobody penetrate it. And that's how these other groups are shutting you out. The Chinese right now, they got your hair. 84% of every dollar spent on black hair goes to Koreans because they're controlling the chain. They're producing the hair, the wigs, everything, and all the way up. And this every city, they sell you wigs, they sell you combs, they sell you hair processing ingredients, oils, shampoo, everything, nail shops and everything. They got you shut out. And black folk find a comfort in going giving their money. They don't practice group economics. Other groups do. They would take your money from you, but shut you out of theirs. You can't get into the Asian market. Jews not gonna let you come in their community and set up businesses. Asians not let you come into Chinatown and put up no damn black restaurants in Chinatown. You can't go to Dearborn, Michigan, Arab town, and put up no black businesses. Black people are committing economic suicide. They want to wonder why they're getting ready to wipe off the face of the earth and why their economic wealth level will soon be zero in about 19 or 20 years.
I hope that everybody heard that. I hope you wrote that down. I hope that you understand from an economic standpoint, we're in a state of emergency. We must radically and immediately shift our thinking when it comes to economics. If we continue to do what we are doing, we will end up economically dead. Those of you who are in here, I know you all are my intelligent black people. You're not part of the masses right now. Unfortunately, you're not mainstream. You are what I call the talented 10th because you're the talented 10th in terms of skill, the talented 10th in terms of vision, the talented 10th in terms of commitment, the talented 10th in terms of desire to change, and in terms of I'm sick of this shit. That in terms of that, you're sick of it just like me, and you're ready to make a change. So I encourage you to really shift. I mean, just do a complete overhaul in the whole layout of economic training in your household. Start in your household. Forget the school system, forget TV, forget all that. Start in your house and apply principles like Powernomics principles. The first books that I gave to my kids, my god kids, my step kids, all the kids, I give them Powernomics. Right? That's the first book I give any child that I come into contact with. Why? Well, because these are principles that you're not going to learn at any white university. You're not going to learn in any public school. But these are the principles that we need. We need specific economic medicine for black people. We do not need generalized medicine because the generalized medicine only makes us sicker. It makes everybody else healthy at our expense. So shift that training. But by the time your child is 12, they should know three things, at least on economics. They should know: one, how to buy real estate, how to buy a home, just the basics, the fundamentals, nothing fancy, appraisals, how to go and, what you need to do, credit, just how to go and actually find a house and buy it. Number two, they should know how to invest in the stock market. I can show you how to invest in the stock market with $5 in 5 minutes. You don't need a lot of education. You don't need a lot of money. All you have to do is have the desire to do it. Number three, how to start a business. That takes a little bit more time, but you can learn how to start a business in a weekend, and your children should know the basics of that. It's just as easy to fill out a form for an LLC as it is to fill out a bunch of job applications. In fact, I think it's actually easier. So do that with your kids. Do it right now. Tell me right now in the comments. Just say, yes, I will. If you are going to shift the economic thinking in your household, shift the paradigm in your life, commit yourself to this. Seriously. It's almost, Dr. Anderson, I'm gonna quit talking, but it's almost like, it reminds me every time I go to church and they say, everybody who wants to give your life to Jesus right now, come up to the front. So I need everybody who wants to give your life to a powernomic set of principles in your life, say, yes, I will. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. You ain't got to learn it from us. We have tools available for you, but you don't have to learn it from us, but you got to learn it from somewhere. Searching for jobs from white people, we've done that for hundreds of years and that has not worked. That's how we got here. So please make that commitment to shift your thinking. It's very, very important. Now, last but not least, I will.
And Doc, before you leave that point, and let them all know that whenever you have one of your schools, tell them I'm always available to come to your schools and assist you in pushing any principles and any information, the facts and data and history that might relate to the points that you're making. I'll be glad to come in and do it. And that's why also when they go buy those books, you tell them right now it's tremendously important for them to buy that the library pack that you mentioned earlier, the Powernomics library pack. They can get all 5 of those books plus a DVD covering how to best educate a Black child. They get all that for $99. It's on a special. We run it because right now we're in serious trouble in this country. And that's why I deeply appreciate you and your schools. And I encourage all of them to try to enroll wherever they can. And I'll come anytime, any place, as long as my health stays stable, to come there and speak to you and help you push anything. But you tell them is buy those damn books and start reading them, because those books will take them in a vertical order from the bottom to the top. The first book, Black Labor, White Wealth, shows you here's all the strategies, techniques, conditions, and attitudes that put you into a ditch and locked you into it, into a social construct, a real life monopoly game that you cannot get out of. The second book, Powernomics, says, but white racism is not perfect. You can beat it if you follow these Powernomics principles. To the T, you can beat it. Thirdly, you got 2 Dirty Little Secrets books that says, here's why you're exceptional people, special people. Do not let them take you off into horizontal issues by calling you minorities and poor folk and people of color, multicultural and diversity. That's BS. Racism is vertical and it's strictly against a white man to the Black man. It's vertically ordered. Anything that respects power is always vertical. I don't care whether it's in religion or in geography or in politics. It's always vertically ordered. But racism is vertical. Classism is horizontal. Stay away from these horizontal issues like class, women, gays, midgets, all that kind of stuff. What political party you belong to, what religion belong to. Those are horizontal issues. They will never elevate you. All they do is spread you out and thin you out and make you more vulnerable than you ever were. And so you tell them to get all those books as quick as they can. And you have done a magnificent job up to date, because every time I came on your program, there was always an uptick. And I could call over to the Powernomics Corporation and say, I was on Dr. Watkins' show today. Did they impact your book sales? They said, no, you me go on there. That Dr. Watkins asked, when Dr. Watkins asked him to go buy them a library packs, they sure will buy them. They said, and they become more enlightened. I'm gonna let you talk. Let me give you a long speech.
Well, I'll just say that it's a basic idea to me in the sense that, I'm not good at selling something that I don't believe in. And to me, this is not a matter of selling a product. This is me saying to people, look, you give thousands of dollars a month to big white corporations that care nothing about you, that do not benefit your life, that teach you nothing. Why not spend a few dollars on something that's going to elevate your future? I think it's a real simple, basic transaction. It's not even, people spend, I know people that went to go see the Black Panther movie, and then they went out to dinner. They spent more money doing that than they would have cost them to have the whole bundle pack of your books. So I think these should be conversations that are a no-brainer, and I think that what's unfortunate is when you have destructive individuals in the black community who say, oh, well, you're asking black people for money and you a crook, you take it from. It's like, no, if somebody is taking money and giving nothing in return, that's not a healthy transaction. That's a doctrine of unequal exchange, as you like to call it. But if somebody's giving you something that's going to last you for the rest of your life, and you can afford that, then that's a wonderful thing. I mean, that's a wonderful trade. So I think that we as a community, we've got to stop doing that, where we just somehow we will walk past 1 million white businesses that are robbing black people blind. We'll walk, we won't say nothing about the Arabs gas station on the corner or that's overcharging for everything. We won't say nothing about the Asian nail shop that's taking all this money out of black women's hair. We won't say nothing about big corporations like Nike and whoever using Colin Kaepernick to get you to buy sneakers. But yet we will then find the little black business owner who says, I'm going to take the money that you spend with my business and I'm going to do as you're doing. I'm going to apply it to a reparations lawsuit that you've been fighting for over 20 something years. And people say, oh, well, you shouldn't be asking for money. What is wrong? That's crazy to me. People don't, I think that people just don't understand, to really fight a war, you need to finance the war. You can't fight a war if you're in poverty or you're giving all your money away to the enemy. That does not work. So what I like about what you're doing is that, I have no problem telling people to buy the books. Because number one, that's what I did. I own them. I read them every day. I've been reading them for years and I keep reading them over and over again. But then number two, because I know what you're going to do with the money. I know that money is going to be used to sustain what you're doing, particularly in your fight for reparations. I mean, you filed lawsuits on this. Everybody else is talking, they're hashtagging it. You have filed lawsuits and you are paying attorneys out of your own pocket to fight for reparations. That's a whole nother level of reality that I think a lot of people don't get. You don't get that from just putting out a hashtag or just talking about it on the internet. You actually went to court. You've gone to Capitol Hill. You sat with political officials for decades to try to get this done. So I'll be damned if somebody gonna tell me that $99 is too much for somebody that's really out here fighting for the people. It should be $99,000. I will give anything to support everything you're doing, and I have no regrets about that whatsoever. So I think people should know that.
Well, thank you for that, and I hate to tell them this, but I don't want them to grow up and be as stupid as I've been, because you know why? In all the years of writing and writing books and filing lawsuits and putting out hundreds of thousands of newsletters on how to enrich black folk around the world. But guess what? I have never drawn a salary from the Harvest Institute. Never drawn a salary. That's in 25 or 30 years. I've never gotten one penny in salary. Point two, I don't even get a penny. I don't even draw an income from the Powernomics Corporation. But I spend most of that money again trying to do things to help black folk. And as a matter of fact, that's why I'm saying I passed up all kind of good opportunities to enrich myself. I look back now and I'm agonizing reappraisal of my behavior. I should say that white folk told me twice in history, said, Dr. Anderson, you can be a rich man and get everything you want if you do one or two things. And that is, I said, what's that? They said, first of all, change your attitude. And secondly, stay away from race matters. And said, we'll take good care of you. I was told that in Texas once. I was told that in Tallahassee, Florida. They said, we'll take good care of you. And I said, what do you, they said, but you got to play your cards right. I said, what do you mean play my cards right? They said, stay away from these racial issues. And I went on and told my wife, Dr. Boris Watkins, I told my wife, I said, baby, I got it made. If I just keep my mouth shut, stay away from race matters, you'll never have to work another day in your life. And guess what? I tried like that. I walked around for about 3 or 4 weeks. My wife said it was only 3 or 4 weeks. I thought it was a month or two like this. Just trying, so I said, I'm gonna get some money for a change. But I couldn't do it because every time I looked around, there was something happening mean to black folk. Black folk were exercising inappropriate behavior, working against themselves, complicit in their own denial of opportunities and resource enrichment by playing around with horizontal issues. I said, I gotta stop black folk. So I gave up all the positions I'd had in government. I was at the highest levels of every level of government you can get, from the federal levels, international levels, trade missions, chairing a board for governors, heading up international programs. I gave it up to be with black folk. And so I'm poor, but it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't really matter anymore. But I want them to buy those books and learn how to read and quit letting people insult me by misusing and abusing them. I'm hurt, deeply hurt and offended when I look on the TV every day and Black folk let everybody else take advantage of them and misuse them and abuse them and subordinate them. Stand up for yourself and start demanding and pushing back. You started demanding, pushing back by doing that vertical system I told you. 1 is build those communities. 2, use that money and resources from your community to start businesses. 3, take that business money and control the politics. 4, take the politicians and make them control the law enforcement and agency, the police. And 5th, get yourself some communication systems, some radio and TV stations. And 6thly, control your educational system. And that's why right now, I'm going to try to come back and work on trying to come back with you in maybe about 3 or 4 weeks. I'm going to identify 4, 5, 6, 7 major vertical industries I want Blacks to go into, from where they can control it from the bottom to the top. It'll be wide open for anybody to go at any level, and from the bottom, from the production level to the top at the retail. We're gonna play the games that other groups play against us. We're gonna build our own industry, take care of our own people, and revolve our money around 8 to 12 times before it leaves our hands. We're gonna take care of our own people and support those we should care about and who we do love, which is our own families, our own race, and our friends first and foremost.
All right. So everybody, what I really want you to do is, as you shift your thinking on economics, and I want you to think long term. This is not something that's going to happen in 2 weeks. You're doing this for your grandchildren, your great grandchildren. I want you to think of your house as a university. Everything, just like you might monitor what your children eat, you need to monitor what they take in intellectually. So get them, books that come from Dr. Claud Anderson's collection, which you can find at powernomics.com. And also there are other books out there. I've got some books, but you can check out my books if you want to, but it's okay if you don't, that's fine. But make sure you're careful about what information they're consuming and educate them in a certain way so that they're prepared to create and take advantage of these opportunities that he's talking about. You can't implement Powernomics principles if you got a whole community filled with laborers who want to go work for a white man. It just won't work. They could be sitting on $100 million opportunity and not even identify it because they haven't got the basic skills. So one of the things that white folks do very well is they've established a massive chain nationwide of schools, of universities, business, you know them as Duke University, Fordham University, the University of Virginia, et cetera, but they've created a nationwide network of institutions designed to train individuals to implement the systems that support white supremacy and dominance throughout the world. Right, that's what they did. They created that system. So if you want to know where the Black Business School came from, the Black Business School was designed to build an army. I want an army of hundreds of thousands of young people in the next generation who are trained on the basics of buying real estate, on the basics of starting businesses, the basics of investing, so that when they are capitalized by you, and that's what we covered when we talked about the BEEP, the Black Economic and Educational Excellence Plan, the lecture I did the other week. When you capitalize them and also give them the skill, they are prepared to implement another model that we created in the Black Business School, the KID model for making a child into a millionaire: knowledge, investment, discipline. So keep following us. If you don't have, if your money's short right now, that's fine. You can actually go to theblackbusinessschool.com. Just take the free option. There's a free option where you still get something for the free option. If you want to do a degree granting program, you can go to blackmoney101.com. I think right now the discount makes it about maybe $2-3 a day or something like that. It's very, very cheap, less than a Happy Meal, and you can begin and actually get your certificate in the first step in your business knowledge. But you got to do something and start reading Dr. Claud Anderson's books. I'm very transparent with you all. I'm recommending these things to you because these are the things that I do. I read Powernomics. My niece just got born. We created a trust fund for her. We're educating her in a very specific way. And I've been very open about it because I can tell you this: when my niece is 28 years old, she will be a millionaire and she will be highly trained on economics. She will not be an economic victim. So I will give you the whole blueprint to that. And I just need you to implement it because your kids are your kids and your kids are not mine. So I want to say thank you, Dr. Anderson, for your time. It was an honor talking to you as always, sir.
Well, thank you, and I always look forward to seeing you every week. And when I start announcing these vertical integrated industries, I know I'm gonna come right through your system because I know you got somewhere about 10 or 20 million listeners across America, around the world. You're the most outspoken people with the biggest following in America. I think that's a good place to start to acculturate now people to start their own vertical industries. And I'll make some suggestions to them. and I'll identify people that's going to put a footprint down in these things for them.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, you know, one day I hope we do have the millions listening. We've got a decent number of people. The tribe of intelligent Black people is growing every single day. If those of you who want to support or be a part of it, you can go to intelligentblackpeople.com. That's intelligentblackpeople.com. And we are spreading the gospel of Black economic intelligence, and that's what we believe in. That's what we fight for. And also make sure you stop by powernomics.com. Hit the thumbs up button before you go. Download us on iTunes or SoundCloud if you want to listen through your ears. And we will see you guys soon. Have a great day. Thanks again, Dr. Anderson.
Thank you, and have a pleasant day, buddy.
You too, my brother. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.